Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. I'm Tony Marr, and with me as always is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everybody, we are so glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and have real conversations about life, faith, growth, and maybe even a little sports and pop culture.
If you're looking for a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, around here, it's more about those honest, heart-to-heart conversations, like the one you'd have on a front porch with good friends. Sometimes we stay on track, sometimes we take the scenic route.
And honestly, that's half the fun, isn't it? We dig into the highs, the lows, and all the in-betweens of living out your faith in real life. Along the way, we may pull up a few extra chairs and invite some friends onto the porch to share stories and ideas that just may change the way that you see things.
So whether you're chasing your purpose, building your faith, or just trying to live a little more fully, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and join us. This is the Pulpit and Porch. We got a seat waiting for you.
Summertime.
Something like that, even though I'm actually in a jacket today. So,
yeah, we've had some rainy weather this week, little cooler temperatures, waking up in the 50s.
I love it, but I know that like 50 starts getting close to 40, which gets close to 30, and you're typically out around those temperatures.
Yeah, I'm done. Put me back in bed under an electric blanket.
At 50 degrees, as long as I'm not outside in it for a long time, I can be in shorts and a hoodie, and that's my favorite weather.
I like high 60s. High 60s, low 70s. That's great.
It can get a little warm sometimes in those, just being a hoodie, but yeah, it's good weather. Well, I guess we should move to San Diego.
Now that's good weather.
That's like 75 all year long.
All year round.
Yeah. And
that's great weather.
It's but you're in California. I like the East Coast. So you'd be West Coast.
California is the West Coast.
I was going to say, I might be closer to Landon, but I'm not sure. He's somewhere in Texas, and Texas is so long. I might be as close here as I would be from California getting there. So he's in Waxahachie. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong.
Waxahachie.
Yeah, it's a crazy name, south of Dallas, but they're there for, I don't know. Honestly, by the time this airs, they'll probably been gone for a week and a half. So,
you have any big summer plans?
No, this is our last summer. We do, but this is our last summer of travel ball. And so Colby's finished his junior year, heading into senior year, of course, in the fall. And we're in our last season of summer baseball. So Landon's traveling. Brody's got some stuff he's doing, just getting ready for college and jobs and things like that. And Colby's got baseball. And so we, they do a bunch of free concerts and just a wide variety. There's some local Christian radio stations that do some that are just free. And we missed one of those last week traveling. But like tomorrow night is Spank, the 80s cover band, is coming in, and they're doing a free concert out of Winged Deer. And so Mel and I are going to go out there and just hang out. And so like we're going to do some things this summer. We've got stuff on the calendar, and I think Fridays at Founders starts this week in Johnson City, and Irwin has the farmers market that'll get kicking up here. I probably already started mentally. I don't remember all those dates, but our weekends are free now. We've been so busy. This is our first weekend where we don't have anything. Like a buddy texted me the other day and said, "Hey man, I've got a team in a golf tournament in, like 3 weeks, and it's on a Saturday." And I looked at me, I was like, "Do we have anything on this day?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Sweet, I am in." And so, we're getting to do some things that are a little bit like that. What about you guys? I know you all go a little bit like.
Yeah, we leave in just a couple days, heading to Outer Banks, North Carolina for a week. Then we've got a wedding in July. My daughter's getting married, so we'll be in Chattanooga for several days in July.
That has gotten here quick.
It's gotten here quick. Yeah, we were looking yesterday. We're staring down June in just a couple days. Yeah. And I've had an out-of-town overnight trip every month so far this year.
And that's going to continue until I think like November. Yeah.
So you might as well just get December in,
Might
just
as
so
well
you
knock it
can,
out. Yep.
so that you can just say you got the whole year.
That happened 2023. I had at least one out of town overnight trip every month for the whole year.
I don't think, no, I don't. I think I had my only out of town overnight trip last week at the state tournament. So
First one of the year.
yeah, but
yeah, it's good to have you back in person.
It was that was a lot. That was a really cool experience. I will not do my grumpy old man speech on some things, but I loved it for my kid and for his teammates. There was just some organizational things of the 3-time defending state champion. They divide 8 teams into 2 brackets. We ended up on a draw in the half with the 3-time defending state champion, and they get to host one half of the bracket at their home field. And so they play all of the first 4 games, their first 3 or 4 games, they play them at their home field, sleep in their own beds, have their own hitting cages. Their parents and all these people run parking. They charge for parking and all this other stuff. They probably raise their funds for their entire program in 4 days. I mean, it's just because it's a lot to run a program. I've heard some people talking like high school soccer programs and baseball programs, things like that. It's $10,000 to $20,000 a year to run these programs now. When you start looking at uniforms and they do some nice things for the kids as well, give them some hoodies or jackets or something like that. But you take all those things, and they probably make 10 to 15 grand in 4 days.
We should host a tournament.
Charging for parking and selling concessions. Anyway, I won't go into all the grumpy old man stuff, but that part of it. I was just going, man, that's like the most TSSAA thing I've ever seen in my life. But the experience was really, really cool. Colby had a blast, and they played 3 games. They won their first one, lost their next 2, lost to the eventual state champion, in their second game, and then just got into a really tough losers bracket. The team that beat us in our 3rd game played Eagleville to a 13-12 7 inning, or maybe it went to extras. Maybe it was 8 or 9 innings, but to a full game 12. And last year, Eagleville run ruled every team they played at the state tournament. They beat every team they played by 10 runs or more in 5 innings. And so they're very, very good. And so they're now the 4-time defending state champion. And so yeah, but it was incredible. It's good to be back. And yeah, I'm excited. So summer is here now. We're past Memorial Day. I know not officially, it's not like on a calendar here, but I think in the minds of people,
School's out.
School's out.
For us, school's out. I know for most normal places, it doesn't get out until June, but here, school is done.
Yeah. It's been done this is the first full week for most of the schools, but there's some schools that have been out for a week now. And so they're in their 2nd week of being out. And it just, with it comes so many things. Now it's a lot shorter because for us here in Northeast Tennessee, we get out right before Memorial Day, but kids go back the first full week in August. So they only get 2 months off. I guess they get 7, maybe 8, 9 weeks, maybe 9.5. But it used to be a much longer
3 months. Yeah.
And so you used to get this really long window because I grew up in the South, and we always got this space of around Memorial Day. We were out of school about now until it was late August.
Labor Day.
Yeah.
We never went back until Labor Day.
I remember we always went back a little before Labor Day here, but it was like the 28th. 26th. It was something really late in August, but that's still a week and a half before, week before Labor Day sometimes. But my dad talked about, he said his birthday was late August, And he said, I remember when they made us start going to school, and I would skip school on my birthday because he's like, they made us start going to school before Labor Day. But yeah, so summers are really short. I think, we've become so occupied, and I just mentioned that I'm doing it. But my kid plays 4 tournaments this year. It's not like we're out every weekend and things. And so we've tried to do things a little more simply inside of the travel sports world. But yeah, I mean, we'll play like 4 tournaments this year, couple church event things going on, and then we'll just kind of hang. But you get 8 weeks. I mean, 9 weeks, half the summer's gone with those weekends and those things going. And then, we'll go see Landon at some point in time. They'll be touring through close, and we'll take some time to go down and see him for a day and just some things like that. So, yeah.
Fun times. Hey, before we dive into what we're talking about, I have a public service announcement to make. So last week on Porch Picks, I said that I've been watching this show, Mr. Robot, and had gotten through the first 2 episodes. So I've been waiting to watch it again because the first 2 episodes were really good. And it took until like Saturday for us to finally have a chance to be able to sit down and watch another episode. And episode 3, things got dark, like crazy dark. And I looked at my wife and I said, I don't like this. So maybe it's just 1 episode. So we said, we'll finish this one and we'll start episode 4. Halfway through episode 4, we said, we're out. We're done. So last week I said Mr. Robot is a great show. And I IMDb'd it to make sure, it was going to be okay. Yeah, I can't recommend that show at all. And somehow there's like 6 seasons of it, and we made it through 3.5 episodes. First 2 episodes were great, and then it went downhill pretty quickly. Got really dark. So yeah, I withdraw my endorsement of that show from the Pulpit and Porch.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't have time to, of course, read all this sitting here and going through, but like the parents got on IMDb. It's frightening, intense, and everything but the sex and nudity is a red thing. So violence, profanity, alcohol, drugs, and smoking, and then frightening, intense are all like red labels. And so that would be a pretty intense thing to go through.
Yeah, and so I'm sitting there watching it, and I said, you know what? I just talked about this show in our last episode, and we're gonna send tens and tens of people to watch this show. So I said, maybe I go and edit that out. No, I'm just gonna hop back on and say. So if you listened to last week's episode and you quickly jumped off and went to stream Mr. Robot, and now you think, man, what's wrong with that guy? I am officially withdrawing my endorsement for that show.
It's a tough world. I've been sending you a few clips because we both love this. I get a little weird about like kind of these conversations sometimes. I love getting crazy deep into shows and just talking about the kind of what's going on there, what's the culture, what's the mindset, why would the director want to do that? I love those things and those conversations. And I said the other day, like Netflix is removing things from the front end of shows that they don't want to be there. Like they removed a Bible verse from The Passion. They removed a quote from Robin Hood. And it's just, they're creating the culture they want to create. And in that space, I think it's hard because shows are getting incredibly, and that is a Netflix show, isn't it? Mr.
No, it's
Robot?
not. It's not. I don't remember what we had to watch it on.
It might be. I don't remember. I don't remember that one either. But
like Tubi or something like that.
Oh wow!
I think it's a USA Network show.
You did have to watch it on Tubi, but it's a hard thing with shows anymore, and it's almost hard to recommend anything. I heard a guy say the other day, and then this is not at all what we're talking about today, but I heard a guy just on a reel the other day say, he's like, I've never fully understood this as a pastor, and he was preaching, and he said, but the Friends TV show was such a phenomenon, and people still love it, and they laugh, and they do these things. He said, but when you start to step into like you got, all the things. And he just started listing all the very basic stuff that you see about the show, that the show is very sexually driven. It talks around topics of, hookup culture and pornography and things like that, just on a constant basis. And there's so many other little things that kind of bump in there. And he said, and yet the people of God are laughing at this. And like, these are things that very much go directly against scripture. And so like, I just found, I was like, man, those are really challenging thoughts. And I don't know how, I really don't. And people might go, well, that's stupid, Robert. You should know how you would respond. But I bet the vast majority go, like, Friends is terrible, but they probably watched The Office, which has got its own version of those things.
What's interesting is my all-time favorite show. We've talked about this before. My all-time favorite sitcom is Cheers.
Yeah.
Which, rest in peace, George Wendt. Died last week.
You and I are getting to that age where the people that were our age when they were playing shows are now getting ready to. Yeah.
But I saw an article that came out that said Cheers is the most watched sitcom in television history. And its final episode is the second most watched episode of TV in television history, behind only the finale of MASH. Now, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot more produced now. There's a lot more content and a lot more channels to watch content on. Whereas back when Cheers was at, you had NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox was about all you had. And so your choices were greatly limited, and so caused more viewership to those places. But I look at that show, and I watched that show with my dad, with my brother when we were growing up. But the whole show takes place in a bar. The whole show takes place around drinking beer. And yet I felt like it was a fairly wholesome show. It was something that I've watched with my kids several times and have no problem watching with my kids. I would have no issues at all endorsing Cheers to our audience. If you haven't seen Cheers, I don't know where you've been, because it's last episode was like 25, 30 years ago. But
I think it's one of those things too, that like you think about Cheers, Golden Girls, shows like that came from that era. One, I would say that I think that not because of the multiple platforms, but because of the need to crank shows out so quickly now, I think that
shows aren't given a chance now.
Well, and I think that just the quality has gone down, because you go back to that show. I mean, it opened up, you've got, and I'm not going to remember names, but you start thinking through just in the run of that show within the first few years. Of course, you had Ted Danson, you had George Wendt, you had Woody Harrelson, who came into the show.
Christy Alley.
Yeah.
Well, Christy Alley wasn't until a little bit later.
Yeah, but she came in, just a couple, 3 seasons in, because the original, the original love interest, the girl that was there,
the blonde.
I just went blank on her name.
Name.
And so you kind of step into those spaces, and it was really a great, John, last name starts with an R, that does all the cameos on all the Pixar movies.
Cliff.
Yeah.
Cliff Clavin.
Yeah. And so, I was watching the other day, we were watching Poker Face, and Ray Perlman, who plays Carla, she popped up in that, and I'm going, oh my goodness, I haven't seen her in forever. But Kelsey Grammer, you mentioned Kirstie Alley, Shelley Long was the other that was there. Long. And I mean, you just kind of start looking through the people who were in that, and that cast hung together for the most part. I mean, they really stuck in there, and you saw shows spin out of that were worth something. And I would equate it to like Big Bang Theory today. I think Big Bang Theory, now all of the problem, I'm not saying it's a wholesome show. I'm not advocating anything for all of that. I'm saying that, like, in the space of Big Bang Theory, from start to finish, having watched through it a couple, 3 times now, There's a couple of clips of some seasons that I'm going, if I was going to skip something, these are the 4 episodes I would skip. But the second time through that thing, when I watch it, I just go, maybe the most complete sitcom in the last 20 years. I don't know of anything from 2000 till now, last 25 years, that is as complete as that. There's not a gap. It doesn't slow down. It is funny. The characters hung together. They built them well. Sheldon's development, and from that, you've got young Sheldon. You've got another spinoff that's getting out. I don't think this one's going to take as well. It's the comic book guy and some other stuff. They're doing another spinoff though, but like the show and Cheers spun off Frasier. And you had
I never watched Frasier.
Good show and things. It's funny to me though, you talk about, like, I grew up in a world where drinking was not just a sin. It was one of the 2 things that was probably preached about at least 3 times a month in church, and everybody watched Cheers, which did nothing but promote drinking around a bar. And so those are the things for me that I look back and I go, you and I've talked about this. Is drinking a sin? I think it can be hard to prove that. I don't drink, you don't, and I mean, it's just something that we, it's a personal thing for us. It's a conviction that we have, and I don't care to go watch my buddies play music and a buddy of mine have a beer and I feel like, oh no, I can't be here in this space. But at that same time, like, if you're going to grow up in a world and you're going to be very dogmatic on your family and your children and your church of this is what you should you be going home and watching shows that promote the exact same thing that you don't? And so I just felt like it was just a weird thing. But with that, TV used to change in the summer, and now you get summer shows and all these things. And we're talking about summer today inside of the church.
Summer also used to be the time for the big blockbuster movies.
It did.
And I think we're losing that a little bit.
I think we get too many, again, I think it goes back to, like you said earlier, and this is where I totally agree. Too many streaming services, too many people, and I don't think we have A-list actors. I love the fact that, whether you like him or not, and I don't necessarily care, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, I love the fact that we kind of have these leading, like, stars that are really coming back, and you've got these characters people are going, I want that person to do. We were watching Dune 2 the other day, and Bob Dylan was fighting Elvis inside of the movie, and I thought that's pretty cool. 2 guys that level of career right now landed in this movie, and one had played Elvis and one had played Bob Dylan, and they're fighting against each other. And I was getting ready to start, and not unfortunately, it's not like something you're going, oh no, are we going to be surprised? Who's going to win? But I was like, all right, Elvis and Bob Dylan, and my family kind of looks at me and goes, what? And I'm like, they both played. Landon wasn't there. He would have gotten it immediately. But the other was like, oh yeah. And I'm like, who wins? And they're like, not Elvis. And I was like, well, he is the main, Bob Dylan is the main character. But I love this we're starting to get, but we didn't have stars for a long time. And to me, our stars started doing Marvel things. And I just think it lowered the bar because they didn't have time to do a lot of other stuff. And they never really came out of it and started doing great films again. And so Robert Downey Jr. did a couple of things. He did The Judge, which is incredible, with Robert Duvall. Really, really good movie. And I mean, I'd have to go look. I mean, I just don't know. I just don't feel like the Marvel characters did a lot of really meaningful films since I guess the first one was Iron Man that they kicked off. Was that 2000?
I have no idea.
It's been a long time now. And maybe it was 2003. But that's just kind of where I'm at. So I agree. It used to be a blockbuster thing, but I don't think we have blockbuster stars anymore. And so as the ageless,
I think the last big blockbuster star, and I'm not a huge fan of his, but I think the last big blockbuster star is Tom Cruise. And I think Tom Cruise saved the movie industry.
So I feel like those are 2 different things. I would say Leo, who's younger than Tom, was the last big. I mean, he's still acting, of course, and does great. But they don't do as many. You just don't. Guys like that don't do movies the way they used to. guys like Morgan Freeman and Samuel L. Jackson and stuff like that do so many movies, and you just don't get that from Leo and Brad and George. Types people. You don't get Julia and Sandra that do just a lot of movies anymore. And I feel like those leading people, I think you've got to get, go back to Nicholson. I always have to think Nicholas or Nicholson before I say it. But you back to Nicholson. Oh my goodness. I'm so mad that I can't think of some of these other characters and things, but like you or these actors, the characters they played and stuff, is all I can kind of see in my brain. But you go back to his genre, the men and women there, they were just these crazy, crazy, crazy leading people. And I just, I love the new stuff. I love the Marvel movies. I love Star Wars, but
I think that Top Gun Maverick saved the movie industry. It brought people back to the theaters coming out of COVID. People were not going to movie theaters. The industry was dying as far as movie theaters. Everything was streaming. And then Top Gun Maverick saved it.
I will not argue that. I definitely would want to spend a little time working through that. But yeah. No, I agree. Summer used to be a great time for movies. I probably saw, you get 10, 12 weeks in a summer, 10 weeks in a summer, and I probably saw 6 movies. I probably saw a movie 6 of those 10 weekends.
Yeah.
Back when I was in older high school, right out of high school age, and just going and hanging out and watching movies and being with friends and grabbing a blizzard and stuff. Just a different time, and movies were great, and they didn't cost $15 to $20, and so it was just a different world. So I agree, it used to be great. Now it's not so much.
We had a dollar theater in Las Vegas, Torrey Pines Cinema.
We did not have one of those where I lived.
They had one here for a while, reel to reel.
Yeah, and now it's a athletic training facility.
Is that what it is now?
I think it is. I think part of it is.
Driven down there in quite a while.
I think they turned it into a.
I miss that old theater because you could go and they raised the prices to like $2 or $3, which was, inflation took place. And you never knew. You needed to be sure that you were updated on your tetanus shot before you went. And there was a very good chance that your chair was either going to break while you were sitting in there, or you needed an umbrella because the roof was dripping on you from something while you were there. But you were there watching a movie for $3.
Yeah, you could take your whole family for my family, like, $12 or $15. And
for my family was still $100, but
but we could go. And then they, like on Tuesdays or something, you could go and it was like $2, like it's like $3 for the movie, $1, or maybe it was $2 for the movie, $1 popcorn, $1 drink, and $1 candy. And so for $5 per person, you could have a pretty cool experience, and you could sit there and kind of go through. And I thought, it was $5 or $6. And so $25, $30, that's less than one person would go to a movie now if they were going to get popcorn, drink, and a candy.
I had a date night with my daughter this past week, and her favorite movie growing up as a little girl was Lilo and Stitch. She had Lilo and Stitch posters in her room, loved Lilo and Stitch. And so the live action Lilo and Stitch came out last week. And so Thursday we had a date night. We were going to go to dinner and go see Lilo and Stitch. So we knew exactly what time we wanted to go. We went to dinner. We headed on over to the theater. I hop in line. She goes and stands over and waits while I'm waiting to pay. I get up and I tell the girl at the register, I said, okay, I want the $6.25 Lilo and Stitch. And then she pulls it up and it was like $21 a ticket. And I said, whoa. And she said, well, it's 3D. And I said, we don't want 3D. We really don't want 3D. And so then the next one was like $6.45 was a non-3D, just, a little 20 minutes later. That sounds great. So she pulls it up. There's 2 seats left in the theater, and there is like one is on the front row over here on the left side of the theater, and the other is on the last row of the right side of the theater. And it's supposed to be a daddy-daughter date, and so I don't want to be like, hey, waving at her from the other side of the theater. So, well, let's look at the next show. The next one was at 7:05. It had 2 seats left. They were together, but they were on the very front row of the theater on the left side by the emergency exit. I said, how about the next one? So now we're at 8:05, and that one was completely sold out. So I walked over to my daughter and I said, I think we've got 2 options. We can either sit on opposite sides, sit in completely different theaters together, or we can go to 3D. And we decided to bail on the movie, and we didn't go. So maybe summer blockbusters are back with Lilo and Stitch.
I think it's hard to find a movie you can take your kids to. And, you can reserve those seats on an app.
Yeah, but then you're paying service charges.
You don't have to pay a service charge with those. I don't think.
On Fandango, you do.
Oh, no. I just went to I go to the AMC app and do it there. Yeah, I don't pay Fandango. I go straight to the source.
I didn't think that Thursday, Lilo and Stitch on a Thursday evening was going to be sold out for 4 straight shows.
Technically, it wasn't sold out. It was just not seats you wanted. One of them was sold out.
Where's your favorite place to sit in a movie theater? If you're going to the theater, where do you like to sit?
I want to sit right in the front row of the back section on the left aisle side.
That was very specific.
It was exactly where we sat at Gladiator. Like those seats right there is where I would want to be. And if no one else is going to sit in my row, or there's at least 2 seats on the sides of me and who I'm with, I would prefer to be in the middle. But I just, people are stupid. Landon was talking the other day, or Colby went to a movie the other day, and he just said, Dad, he's like, because all of the boys in my family, the shortest one is like 6'1", and so we're a pretty tall crew. And he's like, I'm sitting there, I'm just in my seat, and somebody just lays their seat in my lap, and he said, like, it was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. And I'm going, that's where there's always a thing of like this trying to make things more comfortable makes things incredibly uncomfortable for a good portion of people.
Yeah.
And so I want to be in that front row to where you can't lay back on me. And I'm still at the point where I would rather take and put my feet on the little bar in the front than I would raise the recliner seat up.
Yeah. I took my daughter, a different daughter, not the Lilo and Stitch daughter, a different daughter, went to see her. She lives in Chattanooga a couple weeks ago. And we went to see not Descendants. What's the new movie? The new Marvel movie?
Oh,
Thunderbolts.
Yeah,
the Thunderbolts. I don't know why I was thinking Descendants. The Thunderbolts. We went to see that one, and we're sitting pretty much in the seats that you just said. We've got the railing in front of us, so there's nobody in front of us, but it's the walkway. But it's stadium seating, so when people walk by, their heads aren't going to block the screen. So really great seat. And I'm sitting. My daughter is right to my left of me. And then there were people behind us, and this lady put her feet up on the seat next to my daughter. And so I can see it out of my peripheral that her feet are right at my daughter's head. And so I looked over and said, is that bothering you? She's like, no, I don't even notice. I'm like, it's bothering me. And then so I keep turning around and like trying to not get in a fight, but let her know this is the rudest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so as if she wants to just up the offensive factor, she takes her shoes off. And so for the entire movie, you've got a nasty foot that's sitting 8 inches away from my daughter's head. And it didn't bother my daughter at all. But I was like, I will say something to these people if you want me to. She's like, Dad, please don't. Dad, please don't. You're going to embarrass me. Like, this is beyond offensive. And there's no etiquette in life anymore.
I think for me, that's one of the reasons I would rather just not go to the movies.
I'm with you on that.
I'd rather, like, one, it's so expensive. I'd rather say, okay, if I'm going to go to a movie and I have the resources to do that, I'd rather take even half of that money and put it into a Dave Ramsey envelope for 6 months. If I was going to go twice a month, and then go out and every 6 months upgrade a piece of my surround sound system. which I don't have. All I have is a little Roku bar. It's not like I have a system, but add to that to where I had a better sound at my house, and I would rather just watch. I'd rather watch things from home. I can get cheaper snacks, the exact same snacks, way cheaper, and we can hang out and have fun, and we can pause it if we need to.
My problem is
like
I have a small bladder, and so I have a rule. We've talked about this before. I will not spend $87 a person to go to the movies if it's under 2 hours long. It has to be worth my money and the investment that I'm putting into that. If I'm having to take out a loan to go to the movies, I need it to be at least 2 hours of entertainment. And that's got to be runtime. Okay. That can't be you're getting 45 minutes of previews before the thing. That's just bonus. That's just add on. The actual runtime has to be at least 2 hours for me to go. And so if I'm going for 2 hours, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom at some point. And so when I'm paying an average of probably $6 a minute for this movie that's at 2 hours long, if I'm going to run to the bathroom, it's a $12 restroom break, so that's where I love home, that you can hit pause. Now the whole family's like, again, Dad, come on, Dad, again. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. This is my third hint water that I've had here. But you have that freedom that you can hit pause. You can go do your thing and come back and re-hit pause. And you haven't missed $12 worth of movie time in 2 minutes.
No, you haven't. So,
and you don't have people smacking their popcorn behind you, opening their candy in the middle of the most intense scene and putting their feet up right by your head,
laying their seat in your lap and all those things. And
knee in the back of your chair.
Yeah. Your kid slapping the back of your chair, yelling the whole time. Yeah. I don't mind going to places where there's people, like this concert we're going to. I don't mind going and sitting there, and it'll be fine. I mean, I'm going to sit down, and there's going to be an entire field, and somebody's going to come sit uncomfortably close when there's plenty of space for them to be. And I don't overly mind all of those things, but like inside of a theater, when I've paid a bunch of money and, and you're there to watch something very specific, I'm going, yeah. Like just going and listen to somebody basically be a radio station of 80s music for 2 hours. That's pretty fun.
But church in the summer, you don't have that problem.
No. And it's usually, your kind of attendance usually dips a little bit because of all the things we're talking about, and people are out doing things, and somebody will go, oh, I was at a movie on Saturday, Saturday night late, and I don't want to take and risk, I'll just sleep in. I don't want to be tired. I got something else Sunday afternoon, and so I'll sleep in and do that. Or, hey, we're going to go to the lake, so we're just going to, check out and do this. And look, I think that this is going to be really, really hard to say. Like, I think we have definitely made church incredibly complicated, and to like, if you're not there 56 weeks a year, you don't love God. And I think it's okay to take a vacation. I think it's okay to take a week and go to the lake and have. I think the tension for me starts to come is like, I don't know. I mean, what's the balance? Is 26 weeks a year enough to come to church? Is it not enough? Is 50 weeks a year the number? You get 2 weekends off, and that's all you get. I mean, if you come once every 4 weeks, so you come 13 times a year, like, is that the number? Like, I don't know what the breakdown and the number would or should be. But
why couldn't God have just put it in the Bible?
Yeah, I think a lot more clarity around a couple of things would have helped a lot. And it's one of those things, Bible written for us, not to us. And so how do we navigate some of those conversations? And
I mean, if you want to look at the book of Acts as prescriptive, not descriptive, they were meeting together daily.
Yeah.
So I think that you're 50 times a week. We're looking at least 363 times. You might get a couple sick days there,
yeah,
but
they probably wouldn't want you if you had the cough, the coop or whatever, the croup.
Yeah.
They'd probably want you to stay at your place. But honestly, at the end of the day, they live life so much together. I don't know how much
one gets it. They're all getting it.
Yeah. And I think too, that's something that, community, and we're a community church, and there's a lot of community churches, and I'm thankful for the sentiment of those things. And I think all you can do is you can try and lead well in that. You can go, hey, here's why we're a community church, and you kind of keep trying to lead in that space to build community. But it is incredibly hard to build community in today's world when people travel so far to get to where you're going. You and I talk about that we could walk out to the front door of the church we attend, and with a 7-iron, we could hit 5 other churches. Just standing at the front door of our church. I mean, you can see the steeples of 4 of them right there. I mean, just standing there, and they're all different denominations and different, faith systems, even sometimes, that are in that world. And it's just really, really complicated to kind of go, man, how do you do that? But being in community, when people drive 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes to get to your location, and they're like, oh, I love becoming the church here, but the involvement is not necessarily heavy. And it's, we had the flood, your family, a new bridge, just kind of, not a new bridge, a bridge that had existed pre-flood just reopened within the last week or so. And
it's a brand new bridge.
And so now they've had to rebuild the whole thing.
The whole thing was washed away
and
downriver. And
so, you guys were at church, 3 times a month. And you had, your drive went from 15 minutes to 50. And so there's a big difference in being, in those things. But 50 minutes, it was definitely a different lift, and it was harder. And I just, I look at my street, and we live in a little subdivision, and our neighbors and things in Jesus's day, people would have lived life together. They would have been farming together and caring for things together, and they would have watched after each other's kids, and everyone was a spare parent, and everyone was a true neighbor that walked in. And so when this whole practice of Jesus, way of Jesus started, that people started to move into this whole idea of, oh, maybe what we've grown up in isn't the right thing. We're going to follow Jesus and his teaching. I think it's definitely something where they were gathering and rallying together and supporting each other as they were trying to figure this out of, we used to do this, now we need to do this. What does that look like in our life? And that's just not common.
It also caused some problems, though, because we read the book of Acts, and we see, especially the beginning of the book of Acts, Acts chapter 2 and stuff, and we see that the believers had everything in common, and they were sharing their possessions as one another had need. And that sounds amazing. We say, man, that's the kind of church we want to be. But what we don't read is later on, one, the reason for that, it wasn't because they all just loved community. It's because they're all in Jerusalem and then Jesus says, I'm going to be back soon. And so you have all of these Jews that had come to Jerusalem every week, but Passover, Jerusalem had a population of about 300,000 people. Then for Passover, Jerusalem would go to 2.5 million people, because you have all the Jews coming from everywhere around that are coming to Jerusalem to be at the temple for Passover. And so you have all of these Jewish Christians, these new Christians that are in town. Jesus says, I'm coming right back. And so say, we're not going to travel back home. We're just going to stay here. And so they stay in Jerusalem waiting on Jesus to come back. And a couple days turns into a couple weeks turns into a couple more weeks. And now they're like, all right, all of our Lunchables that we brought with us, our Yeti cooler has been dry for weeks now. Other Christians are getting sick of their friends that are crashing on their couch because they're all waiting on Jesus. So much so that we get later on, years down the road, that Paul is going to other churches and saying, hey, can you support the Christians in Jerusalem, because they have no money anymore, because they gave everything they had to try to keep their friends in town with them and feeding extra families while everyone was sitting around waiting on Jesus. And Jesus didn't come back as quickly as we thought he was going to do. And so now you've got a bunch of poverty-stricken Christians in Jerusalem that we need the other churches to step up and help. And so it's kind of a crazy situation that's going on there, because they misinterpreted what Jesus had said.
Well, yeah. I mean, and in fairness, Jesus like left it pretty vague, but we're still waiting. And so, it's absolutely. And I think that also, and it's one of the reasons we talk about church plants. I mean, that new things grow faster. They were sitting there in this space and this all happened, and it's like, here's this new, and it was exciting and it was different, and they definitely felt what was supposed to be the emotion, the intensity, the work of the Spirit of this new life in Christ, not this old way of what it had been. And so I understand all of those things. It's still like that whole idea, like the vast majority of us, if Jesus came today into America, I don't think that many of us are opening up our homes and just letting people flood in. And I think we're still too worried about our 401ks and how do we retire well, and well has become the operative word there. Like, how do we retire in a way that matches a standard of living that we think we deserve, not maybe what how would God want to play into that? And I'm not saying there's not some people that think that, there's some people who do think about that part of it. I think a lot of people, though, just kind of lean into a different space. And I just don't know how well we would adjust and adapt to what Jesus is calling. Jesus' calling was then, if he was calling us to the 2025 version of that. And I just say that because Jesus didn't walk through and have to go, and thou shalt leave thy cell phone on the counter for 7 hours a day, because it's, or, hey, you don't need a cell phone, put those things, go get rid of those things, and, just write a letter, send a carrier pigeon. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how would Jesus, we don't know how Jesus would navigate AI and social media and so many other things. We
can ask AI.
Yeah, we could. And so, it would be, would Jesus approve of you? And, so yeah, I think that it's a different world. Summer's a little bit crazy. People aren't around. And I think it just leads to this whole thing of just like, it just leaves summer feeling, at times for some leaders, it's confusing. For other leaders, it's refreshing. For me, a lot of times it just feels exhausting. And I don't, just because I don't think the expectation of people in the room and in the building changes, but yet all of them are there half of the normal time that they would be there.
Which the normal time was already half of the time.
It was already half of what it was when you and I were kids.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. I mean, my kids play travel sports, and Mel's been the one who, with me on staff, that she's taken off and she has to go and make sure the boys get from point A to point B as they drive. And local tournaments, we just look at our kids sometimes and go, hey, if you're playing at 11 a.m., you've got some spare parents here. And I hope that you don't miss something. I mean, I hope I don't miss something that's great. I hope you don't throw a perfect game no-hitter, or I hope you don't hit for the cycle and I miss that, but I hope you do those things as well. And I can't wait to hear about it if you do something great. But I've got a job, we've got responsibilities, and here's where we are.
Even in the summer.
Yeah.
You have a job and responsibilities.
I do. And so I miss Sunday baseball games, and occasionally I'll miss if something coming up at the church, I miss a Saturday game or something like that. But I mean, I get to control the schedule, so I try and work around those things if I can. But yeah.
Hey, so we have a whole episode this week that we're wanting to get into that's talking about this, about how churches can win the summer.
Yeah.
That summer is, I think, for most church leaders, a stressful time. I think for a lot of families, it's a time to unwind, to check out. And a lot of times that's checking out of church as well for long periods of time in the summer. We've got a whole outline that you put together, a whole episode here that we're going to dive into, but we're already at almost an hour of our show. So I think what we're going to do, talking about movies and all kinds of stuff that I don't know meant anything to anyone but you and I, but I've enjoyed it. So I think we're going to call wraps on this episode, and we're going to dive back into this again next week. And rather than spending all of our time talking about movies and summer blockbusters and the last great American movie star, we'll just dive right into winning the summer.
I love it.
Sound good? All right. So that is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch. And we do want to thank you for wrestling through that with us. And as we talked about shows and movies and sports, and I'm not sure what other nonsense we talked about, but we had a good time doing it. And we hope that you had a good time listening. So we want to encourage you to tune in next week as we dive into how churches can actually win the summer with sunscreen, s'mores, and strategy. So want to encourage you, before you end this episode, wherever you're at, go ahead and subscribe to the Pulpit and Porch podcast, like the Pulpit and Porch podcast, follow the Pulpit and Porch podcast, and share our show with your friends. Your liking and subscribing to our show helps others to find it in the algorithms and tunes more people in to join the conversation. Speaking of joining the conversation, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can be a part of this conversation as well. We'd love to know your thoughts on everything that we talked or didn't talk about today. We hope to see you again next week as we continue this discussion on summer. Have a great rest of your week.